Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be showing you how to reproduce a WordPress website that has been deployed live, and we're going to be replicating it in our local computer. So for this tutorial, we're going to be using 10up Docker. I showed you how to install this utility. It is a really nice and simple utility. Even though it's a command line utility, it makes things really easy. However, if you're not willing to use this utility, you can use something like MAMP. MAMP is basically like my Apache, like MySQL, Apache, PHP server that you run locally. And then all you need to do is take your WordPress code and a copy of your database and replace that locally. Aside from MAMP, there's also a utility called Local by Flywheel. This is probably my favorite outside of 10up Docker. This is a super nice GUI and it has a very nice interface and it integrates well with Flywheel if you're using that as your hosting provider. Now, I'm not using Flywheel as my hosting provider. I'm using HostGator. Now, I know that this page looks basically like a default WordPress installation, and that's because it is. I told myself that I was going to be building a companion website to the YouTube channel, and unfortunately, I had to take a break and step away from things for a while. Now, this theme is the basic default theme, and if we go to the dashboard, you can see that there's another update available, WordPress 6.0, and I also have a bunch of plugins to update. Now, rather than updating it on the live website, on the .com website, we don't really want to do that because we don't know if things will break. Now, assuming this is a very complex WordPress site or a custom WordPress site that has custom code and a bunch of plugins, when you upgrade, there's a chance that things will break. However, if you use Git and you replicate things locally, you can use that as a testing or development server. So you can update it on your development server, test things out, and then when things look good, you can then merge it into your live website. We need to be able to connect GitHub to our WordPress install, and we did this in another video. Now, what we're going to do is that we're going to clone this GitHub locally, and then we're going to make a copy of our database. And once again, I showed you how to do this in this video right here, how to connect your WordPress installation with GitHub from your hosting provider. So enough said, let's get started. Once we have the terminal open, we are going to go back home. This is just for reference. This is the home directory. So if we do ls, obviously this is on a Mac, but you can also do it for Linux and even for Windows. We can find the wp-local-docker sites from the 10up Docker utilities. We're going to cd into this directory. I was testing things around, so we're going to be making things from scratch, so don't worry about that. We're going to be initializing an empty WordPress site because when we initialize the empty WordPress site, the utility is going to set up our database, is going to hook everything up for us. So we're going to do 10up Docker, and then we're going to create, and then we're going to call this local site CF for code fallacy .test. And then this questionnaire is what gets you through to install the actual website. So cf.test is going to be our main domain. There are no additional domains. Now, the HostGator provider or server that I'm using is using PHP 7.4. So even though we can use PHP version 8 locally, I wouldn't recommend it. I would try to go with the version that your current website is using on the deploy server. So we're going to be using 7.4. And then, yes, we do want to install WordPress because we want to initialize a very basic WordPress install. It's going to be a single site. This can stay as a default. No. Here's something super interesting, right? So when we push our code to GitHub, we omitted the uploads folder. This is where all the media lives. So where all the photos and videos or anything like that you might upload for your theme or your templates, that's where it's going to live. And we omitted that. So if you go to our gitignore file, you can see that WP content uploads is no longer there because we omitted it. So this option right here in the terminal is telling us, hey, whenever there is a media asset, like an image or a video, do you want to fetch it from the original site instead of actually downloading the WP uploads folder, which is a great tool to have, and it will do it for you automatically. So we're going to do yes on this, and all we need to do is give it the URL. So obviously the URL is going to be https codefallacy.com. And the cool thing is that it will set everything up for you, even if you don't know Docker or Nginx. We're not going to be using Elasticsearch, and now it's going to be creating the environment for us. And the cool thing is that this is going to be pretty simple. Once we have the default WordPress installation, all we need to do is just a couple extra steps and you'll be all set. All right, so it appears that the installation went through. It only took about 40 seconds or so, which is awesome, right? And then remember, this utility uses Docker. So you need to have Docker Desktop installed if you're on a Mac or Windows, or just Docker and Docker Compose if you're on Linux. And just as a refresher for those of you who saw my last video, all this is doing is running several containers with the services that we need to get WordPress up and running. So that's just a refresher. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I highly recommend you watch my other video. So now that everything is set up, we can go to cf.test. Now this is a little bit misleading because it says HTTPS when in reality we need HTTP. So let's open up a tab and go to, and then just remove the HTTPS or the browser is going to start freaking out. Awesome. So this is our local installation of WordPress. This is our base WordPress installation. As you can see, there's nothing here, just like in the original site, right? But now that we know that it's up and running, all we need to do is open up the terminal. And if we type ls, you can see our new project, which is cf-test. So we're going to cd into cf-test. And then in here, this is where you're going to see the WordPress installation. So this is where the WordPress code lives. This is the Docker Compose file for the containers, and then this is the config for Nginx. What we're going to do is that we're going to clone our repository into this directory. So we're going to copy it, and then we're going to go back to the terminal, and then in here we're just going to type git clone and then type the URL. Awesome. Now that the now that the project has been cloned, we can type ls, and you can see that this is the name of our folder, WordPress CF, as you can see here, WordPress CF. So what we're going to do is that we're going to open VS Code in this terminal. You can use any text editor, but what we're going to do is that we're going to rename our WordPress. We're just going to name it WordPress, and then this one we're just going to either remove or just rename so that we can have this replace that. So I use VS Codium, so you can type either code if you're using VS Code. Awesome. So we are in here. So like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to rename the WordPress installation that is currently being used and WordPress-old, and then the project that we just copied, we're going to rename that to WordPress. Enter. In the WordPress-old file, we're going to copy the WP config. This just has the basic credentials for the local database. Now, this is a local database. This isn't the deployed database. And it also has the salts and whether or not to do WP debug, which I highly recommend if you're developing. So in the old WordPress file, copy WP config, and then come up here to the new WordPress and paste it. So now that we have this set up, we need to get a local copy of our database. So we're going to go back to your hosting provider. Okay, we're going to launch cPanel, and then From cPanel, we're going to find phpMyAdmin, which is a database manager that is normally used with cPanel. In this particular server, I have a couple of databases. I initialized 2 databases. Now, if you have multiple, you only need one of these tables, right? And the way to find out is you can just click on it and then go to WP whatever underscore options, and it will tell you the URL. So obviously this is the correct database for codefallacy.com. In order to export this, we're going to click on the actual database. Then we're going to go up here and just click export. We're going to do a quick export. Let's just name it, for simplicity's sake, site.sql. This is going to come in handy when we type the terminal commands to import it. Great. Now, also take note of the prefix wp-eq underscore. This is important because we need to update wp-config file on the new WordPress. Up down here, it's gonna be telling you like what is the prefix. Go to downloads, and then this is our SQL that we just downloaded. We're going to copy this, and then we're going to go to the home directory, find WP local Docker sites, find the current website we're working on, and then find the new WordPress and paste it here. Oh, okay, paste item. So obviously we might need to add this to our gitignore, but now that it lives inside of the new WordPress, it's a lot easier to manage. What we need to do now is open the terminal. And the reason I like 10up Docker is because of the following. Now, what we need to do in our database, right now the database is set up to run locally with the blank WordPress installation. But now that we have the new copy, it's going to be a lot easier. So this is why I like 10up Docker. So all you need to type is 10up Docker, WP. This is the WP CLI tool, DB, and then clean. And it will clean the current project table. Okay, so the update of the table that we're trying to clean has WP underscore. So we need to go back to WP config and not change it just yet. I think I got ahead of myself, so sorry about that. Let's do that same command. And it's going to ask us, are you sure that you want to drop all these tables? Now, remember, these tables are for the local WordPress that doesn't have any of the changes that we want. Boom. Now the tables were dropped. Now, here's the cool thing. To import this site SQL file that we just downloaded, all you need to do is type 10up Docker, wpdb, import, and then WordPress /site.sql. This is why we changed the name to something nice and short. It says that it's not readable. Nah, it's wpdb. I actually don't think you need the WordPress. If it's in the root of the WordPress, you only need site SQL, and it will find it in the root. Yep. So sorry about that. Now it imported the database from the live site, but we're not done. We need to type one more command. We need to replace all instances of code fallacy, both in the code and in the database, codefallacy.com, with the new URL. In this case, the new URL is cf.test. So we go back to the terminal, and we need to do one last command. 10up Docker, wp, search, and replace. Search-replace. And then we're going to search for the HTTPS column --codefallacy.com, and we're going to replace it with http://cf.test. So what this command will do is that it will run through all instances of the code and all instances of the table in the database and replace it. Okay, this is where we need to go back to the code and put the actual prefix of our new table. Remember, our old table had WP underscore, and this one has WPEQ. Again, we're going to run that exact same command, 10up docker wp search replace the URL that you want to search for and replace it with this one. And boom, it made 14 replacements. Now here's the funny thing. I like to run this command a couple of times because there was one instance where I was working. Oh, okay, accidentally. There was one instance where I was working on a really large website that had hundreds of thousands of pages. And when I ran this command, it would only replace the first 50,000, and then the rest of the URLs that it found, it couldn't get past 50,000. So it's always good to run it more than once. I also like to run it without the HTTP. So I do the HTTP first so that we can get our basic domains, and then I like to run it without HTTP or the dash. So just like that. Boom. Awesome. So now if we go back to our website, this is the local one, and refresh it, we should see the new website. Boom, there it is. So now we're running the deployed website, we're running it locally. So now to log in, it's just the same as if you were logging in to your live website. So normally this is WP admin, but on my actual website, I changed it because I know some people can get pretty nasty trying to hack your website to something else. So now we're logged into the dashboard of our actual website running locally. As you can see, this is cf.test. And it's the same thing as if we were in our actual dashboard here. So this is our live website. This is our dashboard from a live website. And then this is our dashboard from our deploy or from our local site. It's literally exactly the same, as you can see. So the reason you would do this is so you can make changes now, and then once you make those changes, you can just send them to GitHub and then merge them, and then you have like a version history of all the changes in case something catastrophic happens. You have a history of your code. So for example, as you can see, we have a lot of updates to do. We have a couple of plugins, and we have a major version of WordPress that we should be updating to, because WordPress has a lot of security vulnerabilities and it's always good to stay up to date. So for example, what we're going to do now, we're going to update from 5.9.2 to WordPress version 6, which is the new release. But we're not going to do that just yet. What we need to do is we need to check out to a new branch. So if we do git status, it says that this is not a git directory. So if we do ls, we need to cd into the WordPress. Okay, now that we're here, we do have an actual git. So if we do git status, you can see that we are on our main branch, and we don't want to push anything to our main branch. We always want to check out. So for example, we're going to check out into a new branch. I can't type today. And we're going to name it upgrade and then -6, basically so that we know this is the branch that updated to WordPress version 6. And git status, you can see that there's a couple of files that we are not keeping track of. This is because of WF logs. Maybe we should ignore this in our git as well, because this is just logging. But as you can see, it's only 3. But now here's the cool thing. We can come up here and we can upgrade to version 6.0. And when our version updates, we will have those changes in the branch that we just created, and then we can go to GitHub, do a pull request, make sure that all the updates don't break anything locally before we send it to to our deploy website. So right now it's gonna take some time because it needs to download the entire version, the entire like WordPress core, update, and then once it updates, I'll continue the video. Awesome. So now our local version has upgraded to WordPress version 6. As you can see, this is still in our local WordPress install. And if we go back to our live one, you can see that it's still asking us for updates. So here is where you would technically, like in theory, you would visit the website, you would see what broke, what didn't, and just make sure that your website works. Now that we made this one change, we can update the plugins, but we need to do the GitHub stuff before we update the plugins just as an industry standard. So first we're going to push all those changes. So now in the terminal, if we do git status, you can see all of the changes that happened for this upgrade, which is because it's a major version upgrade, a lot of changes happen. It's inevitable, right? So we're going to push all of those changes to GitHub, and then we're going to have a history of it. So we're going to do git add. We're going to add everything. Git status. Everything that's green is already being kept track of, and then git commit with the message updated WordPress to version 6.0. 6.0. And now we need to push all of those changes to this remote branch. So we need to do git push dash. We need to set up the upstream origin and then upgrade -6. This is the name of the branch that we're pushing everything to. Awesome. So if you look, everything pushed, we can go back to GitHub and it says, hey, your branch upgrade -6 had recent pushes in less than a minute ago. So we can do a compare and pull request to make sure there are no merge conflicts or anything of that nature. See, GitHub is already telling us that we're good to go. In a team setting, you might want to go over the code that actually changed. For example, this will show you a side-by-side view of what changed, what was deleted in red, what was added in green. And, this is the standard to prevent issues from making it to the deploy website. In teams, this is a standard procedure, but if you're working alone or if you're starting out with WordPress, it's just something that you can go over. So in theory, you would go through every single file, maybe not for version upgrades, but if you're working on a plugin or a theme, you would go through and then approve it. Obviously, all of this looks good. So, we can create the pull request. And then this is basically asking, hey, do you want to merge this version 6 branch to the main branch? And yeah, we want to do that. And if for some reason we miss something, we can always go back to the code that was before this merge, which is why we do this. It's a very, very meticulous process, but it's something that is going to help you avoid like major issues down the line. Okay, so now that the code has been merged, all we need to do is pull all of this code back to our server. So we need to go back to cPanel. Now we need to go and find the terminal. We can do ls, and we want to cd where our WordPress installation lives. Oh, it's right here. I don't know why it took me forever. So yeah, so cd public _HTML. And then in here, now I want to show you the before. So this is our website. We haven't merged those changes yet. And as you can see, it's asking us to upgrade to WordPress 6.0. But because everything has been merged to the branch that we connected our WordPress to, all we need to do is git pull origin main. And then boom, you see all of these changes. All of these changes is all of the upgrade that happened. You can see how many lines were added and deleted for each file, but we don't care about that. If we go here to our main dashboard, this is the codefallacy.com website, and we refresh, we should no longer see WordPress updates being available. Boom, there it is. So our website is now updated to WordPress 6.0. See, like we're currently running version 6, and this is on our .com, and now our local site is also running version 6, and our deploy site is running version 6, which is awesome. Now, if you wanted to do the same thing for the plugins, that way you should do it one by one. So you update one, and then you do the same thing. You push those changes.